This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, great. So, any questions, guys, before I get started? Anyone, any questions from yesterday's class? Go ahead, please. Mm-hmm. Correct. That's so under free trial subscription. The question is under free trial subscription. Azure provides 14,000 credits. Is that hourly basis? Yes, it is hourly basis. But it's not like when you create that free trial subscription, every hour you will get a deduction. No, it's not like that. If you create something, only then the charges will be getting deducted per an hourly basis out here. It just depends upon what kind of a service you are creating. Yes, any more questions online, offline? Anyone, any questions that I can take? Anyone, any questions that I can take before we begin? Okay, so just to recap things on what we were discussing yesterday to benefit everyone. So we started across with something called as a tenant. We initially described what do you mean by an Azure tenant, or what is an Azure tenant out here. Please go. Again, as I was telling, and just a second, guys online, if you're not speaking, please go on mute. I am getting a lot of echo. Isaac, do you have any questions? Guys, please stay on mute. If you do not have any questions, it will disturb the class unnecessarily. All right, so we started across with something known as Azure Tenant, and we said that tenant is a very generic term. If you just take a rent to a particular house, you are called as a tenant out here. You need to pay a monthly rent and so on and so forth. In the same way, when you create an account with Azure, we are not calling it as an account, we call it as a tenant. So, in order to create a tenant, all we did is this. Just a second. Just mute people online. Okay. In order to, let's say, create a tenant, all we did is like used an Outlook or a Gmail account. If you do not have one, created one, or if you have one already, you can take that particular account and go to a website called portal.azure.com and then create an account with Azure. Again, the process was, pretty a little bit, let's say, complicated yesterday because of a lot of trials. So we went ahead, took that ID, we placed that ID inside portal.azure.com, and then we went ahead, solved the puzzle, and then we went ahead, created an account with Azure. So once you have an account with Azure, you are now a tenant to Azure. So you're now something known as a tenant to Azure. Again, to create a tenant, it is free. There is no charge, nothing. There is nothing to use a tenant. If once you create a tenant, you will be given something called as a tenant ID that I can get by going to something called as an Azure Active Directory. So once I go into something called Azure Active Directory, I am able to see something known as a tenant ID out here. This is the tenant ID that is allocated to my account, unique to my account. This is unique to each and every one. So you get something called as the ID out here. Now, whenever you log into Azure using this particular account, Azure will first check for your tenant ID, whether you have a tenant ID or not, and whether you will be able to log into this particular account and so on and so forth. So this is the first thing what Azure really checks out here. The second thing that we were discussing about, or the second thing that we are establishing right now, is that we said yes, we got a tenant ID, great, not a problem. After that, we said, tenant ID is not really sufficient. You will also need to have something called as a subscription. We need to have something called as a subscription out here. Again, just like if I have an Amazon account, I cannot be watching Prime videos. The same way, if I have a tenant ID, I cannot start, let's say, creating resources. I cannot start, let's say, interacting with the cloud. I need to have something known as subscription ID as well. Again, in order to create a subscription, I said that once you have a tenant, just go here and search for something called subscriptions. And once inside this one, just go and click on add subscription out here. And then once you click on add subscription, it will check for your eligibility and it will tell you what are all the subscriptions that you're eligible for. And in this case, we are looking at one specific subscription called as a free trial. A free trial subscription is what we are really looking at. Again, free trial, as the name indicates, is free for the first 30 days. Is free for the first 30 days. And you are going to get somewhere around 14,000 in the form of credits. So again, this number can vary depending upon a lot of factors. Again, some people have got 14,900, some people have got 14,500, some people have got only 14,000. So it just depends upon it's between 14,000 to 14,900 is the credits that you kind of get out here. So 14,000 is the amount of credits that normally I normally tell that we get out there, and this is valid for the 30 days. So if you exhaust or if you consume all the credits before the 30 days, your subscription is disabled. Or if you are using the subscription for 30 days, the subscription is also disabled. It is auto cancelled. You don't have to, let's say, go ahead and let's say cancel it explicitly. It is auto cancelled. It will not drain you. So you will not have any kind of a charges out here. Again, as and when I go here, again, this is not my original directory. So that's the reason it's asking me to switch things out. But if I go here, click on subscriptions, I will be able to see something called free trial. And then I am now telling that please go ahead, click on sign up on free trial. And once you hit the sign up button, you will basically be presented into a page wherein you'll need to enter your ID, your name, your address, and also let's say the credit card information, your phone number, and etc. And then go ahead and register yourself with something called as an Azure free trial. And once you have a free trial, in here you will be able to see something like I see out here, telling the status of the subscription being active, the name of the subscription. In my case, the name of the subscription is called Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, and then something known as a subscription ID. These are a couple of components that you need to see once you go ahead and create something called as a subscription with Azure. This is what you get. So these are the two things that we need to do. Firstly, it's a tenant. Secondly, it's a subscription. And again, we were discussing about the types of subscriptions out here yesterday. We saw free trial, free in nature, first 30 days, and all these things out without any auto renewal. After that, you have something called pay as you go. As the name indicates, pay as you go is a pay model wherein it doesn't have any expiry, doesn't expire, and depending upon how much you use, depending upon what do you use, this is on an hourly basis, and by the end of a month, you need to pay the monthly billing basically for this particular subscription out here. So this is what you get with something called as a pay as you go subscription out here. So it's again no expiration. You need a credit card, and by the end of this month, by the end of a month, basically that you go ahead and create. Let's say I created a pay as you go subscription today on 17th of August, and on the 8th, sorry, on the 17th of September, I will just go ahead and get a bill for that particular month telling that this is what you have used, and I have to go ahead and pay for that particular bill out here. So the question here is that let's say that you have created or you are working for an organization. Let's say you are the only DevOps engineer in that particular organization out here, or you are the only administrator in that particular organization. You go ahead and create something called as a pay as you go subscription. The organization wanted you to create, you went ahead, created a pay as you go subscription out here. Let's say you created that particular pay as you go subscription on the 17th of August, which is today. And I said that the billing period is 1 month. So it will be 17th of September, where you have to go ahead and pay whatever that you've used. Let's say that you haven't used at all. You just created it, forgot about it, you did not use nothing. Would you be paying anything out here? No? Any different answers? Yes? No? Minimum, okay. Anything else? You need to pay a minimum, let's say a couple of answers. Let's go online also and unmute people so that even they can, let's say, give in their inputs. A maintenance charge, okay. Anyone else? Or do I have to pay anything if I don't use anything? Anything that I need to pay? So minimum charges, maintenance charges, anything? Okay. So in a pay-as-you-go account, which normally our organization uses, which it doesn't really expire, the monthly billing depends upon two things. One is the usage, meaning if you are creating n number of resources, those resources per an hour are billed, and by the end of this month, you will get a bill and you are going ahead and let's say paying for that particular bill. In my case, the usage is nothing. I'm not using anything for the first 1 month, nothing, no usage out here. So zero out here. Plus something called as a support plan. Very, very, very important. Why is it important? Is because as an administrator of an organization, you will need to understand what kind of a support plan do you need. Firstly, before I say what kind of a support plan we need, the first question that I want to answer is why do you even need a support plan? Let's say you are an organization, you created a number of resources. One of the resources that you created is giving some kind of an issues. There is some kind of an issues that you're getting. Whom do you reach out to in that case? Whom do you reach out? Support team. Which support team? Microsoft support team, because it's a Microsoft product. And for you to utilize this particular support services from them, you need to pay a cost for Microsoft. That's where support plans really come into picture. For example, if I go into my subscription and if I just go here and I'll say support, something called help plus support out here. Each and every subscription or each and every tenant of Azure will have something called as a support plan in place. And if you check this out here, there is something called support plan. And my subscription called Visual Studio Enterprise subscription is on a basic support plan out here that I have. It's a basic plan. And any subscription that you create, free trial, whatever it is, will come with a basic support plan. Free trial, pay as you go, whatever it is, will by default come with a basic support plan out here. And they are additional support plans which are called developer, standard, and professional direct out here. I just scroll down. I can also show you what is the pricing model each and every plan, kind of, let's say, gives you. Just scroll down. Developer will cost you around $29 for a month, meaning let's say 30 into 8, 2,400 rupees per month. Meaning, if you are in a developer support plan, what do you get out here is this. It's telling Microsoft Azure trial and non-production environments, 24 by 7 customer access full Azure advisor recommendations. Scroll down, you'll also get technical support, business hours, unlimited contacts, and all that stuff. And there is something called 8-hour response time, meaning if you have any issues, Microsoft will respond to you within 8 hours. Just scroll down, there is something called general guidance and all these things out. But operation support, training, and all these things are not offered. Minimum, or let's say the bare minimum is offered in something known as a developer support plan, where you have to pay a minimum of 2,400 rupees, even though if there is no usage at all here. 2,400 if even there is no usage out here. If you're not even using anything, you'll still have to pay 2,400 rupees because you have sorry, you have enrolled for a support plan out here. This is on a monthly basis. Let's say that this 8 hours response time by Microsoft, meaning if you create something called as a ticket with Microsoft. Why do you create a ticket? Because if you have an issue, you'll need to contact Microsoft, and whenever you contact Microsoft, they ticket up, let's say create a ticket on your behalf. And whenever you create a ticket, Microsoft is telling, you know what, I'll take 8 hours to respond back to you. Say that you are a business critical application, you're running a, let's say, a very crucial application on Azure cloud, which cannot wait for 8 hours to be resolved. If you want an additional time, for example, there's something called critical business impact, less than an hour, meaning Microsoft is telling, you know what, I'll come to you and help you out less than an hour in something known as a standard support plan. Apart from that, I'll also give you something called 4 hour plan also, meaning you can go for 1 hour or 4 hours or also 8 hours. And I'll also give you general guidance, operational troubleshooting and all these things out. But cost here would be $100 per month, 8,000 rupees per month. Roughly around, I'm calculating $1.80. So 8,000 rupees per month is what you get out here. And the highest is something known as a professional direct. Professional direct is one of the most costliest plans. This is what normally an organization normally uses. If you are working with an MNC company, they use this one. Reason being, you get a lot of things like trainings, like let's say Azure led web seminars and all that stuff. But this is around $1,000 per month, which is around 80,000 rupees per month, is what you pay if you are on a professional direct plan out here. Again, you can upgrade yourself anytime, you can downgrade yourself anytime you do. If you do not want a support plan, you can come down to the basic. That's something that is an option out here that you kind of get out there. So if the question here is that, uh, is there any cost for the, let's say, Azure usage if you are in pay as you go? Again, I will again ask a question back telling that what kind of a support plan are you using. So depending upon the support plan that you are in, if it's basic, it's zero. For this year, if it's basic, it is zero. If it is developer, it is around 2,400 rupees. If it's standard, it's around 8,000 rupees. If it's professional direct, then it is around 80,000 rupees out here. Depends upon what kind of a support plan that you kind of use. Azure will go ahead and charge you accordingly. And the cost here is your monthly usage plus your support plan. So whichever support plan that you are on, that plus the usage that you are doing per a month. These two combined together will give you a monthly cost for pay as you go subscription. Free trial doesn't have a concept of support plan because it's free in nature. It's for the first 30 days. So there is no support plan. There's only a basic plan that you get with something known as a free trial. So this charge doesn't come into picture at all when you go for a free trial subscription out here as such. Yes, any questions still here regarding the support plans as such? Anyone? Any questions still here that you can take? Okay. Even on pay as you go, is it up to the customer? Yes. It's up to me. He can be a basic level. So that's where things come into picture. Wherein if I go into my subscription and if I say add a subscription out here, under the subscription tab, it will also tell me what kind of a support plan that I need to select, especially when you're doing a pay as you go account. If you're doing a free account, there is no concept of, let's say, support plan out here. You get a basic plan out there. So it doesn't really charge you anything. But when you do a pay account, when you do a paid account out there, you will basically be asked for what kind of a support plan do you want. Depending upon that, you are charged accordingly. Is it a mandatory thing? Yes, it's a mandatory thing. Again, you don't have to mandatorily be in developer standard or professional. You just have to select what is your support plan. If you don't want a support plan, you can say basic. You can say basic so that there is no cost at all. It's like zero. So again, that's the reason I was telling my support plan out here. If I go here into support plans, I am on a basic support plan, and the subscription that I'm using is a Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, and I got the subscription because I'm a trainer. So if I just scroll down, there is no charge at all. There's no pricing at all. It's zero. So if I don't use it, no pricing at all as such. Is does anyone online have a question? Pavni, I see you unmuted. Do you have a question out here? I'm sorry. Visual Studio that I am using right now, this is not a paid subscription. I get a monthly credit of around 10,000 rupees out here. It's because I am a trainer. So Azure gives this particular subscription for trainers to for those are certified trainer out here. So this is something that I get on a monthly basis because I'm kind of a trainer out here. So I get this particular amount out here. Yes, go ahead, please. Every month it will be renewed. Yes. Yes, every month I'll be getting a 10,000 credit out here. Not really a lifetime. It's as good as how long my certification holds. Yes, every Microsoft certification has an expiry. It just depends upon what kind of a certification you're enrolling for. Some certifications have a 1 year expiry. Some certifications have a 2 year. Some certifications have a 3 year. If you're doing an AZ 900 fundamentals, it doesn't have an expiry. It's a lifelong certification that you get. Yes. Any more questions here? Online or offline? Anyone? Anything that I can take till here? Yes. As a trainer, yes, I'll be able to access all these things out here. Anyone? Any questions till here? Okay. On that note, so this is what we are. We created something known as a tenant. We have something called as a tenant. Under a tenant, this is what I need. Firstly, I need a tenant. Without a tenant, I cannot be creating something called as an Azure subscription. So under a tenant, I go ahead and create something called as a subscription of Azure. So it's a parent and a child relationship. Tenant is your parent. Under your tenant, you can have multiple child subscriptions. You can have subscription A, you can have subscription B, subscription C, so on and so forth out here. But the question here that I want to ask is that one subscription is actually enough, right? One subscription. You just need to have one subscription to use Azure. Just like you'll have just say one Prime, let's say subscription, you can watch all the videos out here. Same thing, if you have one particular Azure subscription, I'm good with that. You can go ahead do any kind of a usage with that particular Azure subscription. The question here is then why do we need so many subscriptions out here? Can anyone think of that particular use case scenario on why do I need so many subscriptions, or as an organization if you can think of? Mhm. One account can be accessed by multiple users. Multiple users have multiple requirements. Okay. Okay. Based on the requirement, they'll go for multiple things. Okay. Yes, I can take that as one of the answers out here, which means that each and every user or each and every group of user will have one particular subscription assigned to them. Okay, I can take that. Anything else? Any thoughts? Any thought out here? Anyone? Any more inputs here on why do we need so many subscriptions if one subscription is good enough? Why do I need so many subscriptions out here and so on and so forth? Okay, so let me put that in a use case mode out here. Let's say you're working for an organization, and let's say that particular organization, I'm just giving a generic example, is called a company called Tata. Yeah, as you all know, Tata has a lot of companies under it, like Tata Motors, Tata Finance, Tata Steel, a lot of things, a lot of child companies out here. What Tata tells is that, you know what, I want to move all my data and all my applications to the cloud. And Tata goes ahead and selects a cloud called Azure. So Azure firstly tells, or Microsoft firstly tells that, you know what, you need a tenant. Please go ahead and create something known as a tenant with me. So Tata does the same. Tata goes ahead with something called xyz@tata.com, creates a tenant out here. Once the tenant is created, now Tata is telling, you know what, I have multiple child companies under me. Let's say I have a child company called Tata Motors. I have someone called Tata Steel. I have someone called Tata Finance. Now, how do I make sure that they are into the same Azure account but have different logins? Because Employee of Tata Motors should not have access to the resources of Tata Steel and vice versa. Tata Steel cannot have access to Tata Motors out here. Azure tells I have a great way in order to, let's say, manage this out. Go ahead, create individual subscriptions for individual companies. Let's say now Tata goes ahead, creates something known as Tata Motors. Then one subscription for someone called as Tata Steel. And then the other subscription for someone known as Tata Finance out here. And multiple companies, multiple subscriptions. Now, the point is, I, as an employee of Tata Motors, will only have access or should only have access to the subscription of Tata Motors. Someone else, as an employee of Tata Steel, should only have the subscription of or access to the subscription of Tata Steel. Someone else, as someone called Tata Finance, should only have the let's say access to a subscription called Tata Finance only as such. So if you are an employee, you're logging in, you should only be able to see Tata Motors. If I am an employee who's logging in, I should only be able to see Tata Steel. And this watertight separation, this separation is achieved if you have multiple subscriptions under the same tenant. So you can have multiple subscriptions under the same tenant, have individual logins out here, meaning you have 10,000 employees in Tata Motors, you have 10,000 employees in Tata Steel. If you want to separate this out, if you want to separate how they kind of log in out here, it's better if we have multiple subscriptions. Also, from an administration perspective, one advantage is that I'm now able to establish a separation in logins. Second advantage out here is that from an administration perspective, I will be able to see what is the cost that I'm paying for the Tata Steel or for the Tata Motor subscription. Let's say 100 rupees out here. What is the cost I'm paying here? Let's say 1,000. What is the cost that I'm paying here? Let's say 10,000. Versus what is, let's say, the revenue I'm getting from each and every business. So in this way, what I can do is that I can now tell that, okay, fine, I can establish something called as policies telling that the budget limit for, let's say, Tata Steel cannot exceed 1,000 rupees. The budget limit for, let's say, Tata Motors cannot exceed more than 200 rupees and so on and so forth. So I will be able to do something known as budgeting and control. We'll also see that once we get into subscriptions and how do you set up budgets, how do you set up something known as cost alerts and everything. This is something that we'll be seeing, so that whenever this particular subscription goes beyond, let's say, 150, an alert will automatically be generated to the administrator of, let's say, Tata Steel, and we'll be able to take, let's say, effective action out here. So this is possible when you have multiple subscriptions. Again, to create a subscription, it doesn't cost you. It costs you for a support plan. Each and every subscription can have its own support plan out here. Support plans are per subscriptions. So you can have, let's say, Tata Motors, let's say, basically having a let's say developer plan out here. You can have Tata Steel having a basic plan. You can have Tata, let's say, Finance having, let's say, a professional direct plan out here, depending upon the line of business you are into, depending upon the cruciality of the application. You can now design, or you can now decide what kind of a support plan one has, and how can, let's say, one basically have the access to, and so on and so forth. Yes, one subscription support plan cannot be supported by the other. That's the reason when I go to helpless support, when I say support plans, it is for a subscription that I'm getting out here. I can have multiple subscriptions under the same tenant. So that's the reason you have a drop down. In my case, I just have one subscription. That's the reason I'm not able to see anything else out here. Yes. Once you, if you have an extra subscription out here, you click on that one. Let's say in the case of Tata, you'll have Tata Motors, Tata Steel, and so on and so forth. The support plans will be displayed accordingly out here. The support plans will be going, you can be going ahead and looking at the support plans accordingly as such out here. Yes, any more questions here? Anyone, any more questions here?
Hi Kiran, I have a doubt.
Go ahead, please.
So actually we subscribe, right? If in case
Correct.
I subscribe for standard mode,
Okay.
in between in a month, I
Okay.
have to upgrade.
Please.
I have to
Yes.
upgrade
Okay.
for another subscription.
Okay.
So for that, am I charged, full amount or any discount we will get?
No, it's not a full amount that you'll be charged. It's on a pro rata basis that you are charged. So let's say that the question here is that let's say I have created a subscription on the 1st of September. To make it easy, I'll say it's the 1st of September out here. First 15 days, I'm in a developer plan. So I
Hmm.
will be paying around 1200 rupees because 2400, 2400 rupees per the entire month. I'm only using it for the first 15 days. 1200 rupees is what I paid. After that, from the 15th to the 30th is where I move to something known as a professional direct. If I use it for the entire month, which means that my billing cycle will start from the 15th of September and on the 15th of October. For that particular entire month, I'll be paying 8,000 rupees out here. If you cut it down and you say, you know what, don't want this one, I want a basic plan using for 15 days, you'll be paying around 4,000 rupees. Just depends upon how many days you are using. So it's a daily basis. It's on a, let's say, daily basis. It's calculated. So you are not paying the full amount out here.
Okay.
On a monthly basis, anything is on a monthly basis only. So anything that you see on Azure is on a monthly basis as such. Yes. Any more questions here? Anyone? Any more questions that I can take here? Go ahead, please. Correct.
but couldn't see
Correct.
the tenant ID under Active Directory.
Just a second. Sorry. Just a second. I'll just come back to someone's question. I'm just taking a question offline. I'll just come back to you in a minute.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry. Go ahead, please. Hmm. Based upon the usage of a particular, let's say, company out here. Meaning, your question is that why is Tata Motors taking 100 rupees? Why is Tata Steel taking 1,000 rupees? Why is Tata Finance taking, let's say, 10,000 rupees out here? Same thing. Just giving you a very, let's say, a very basic example. You have postpaid plans in, let's say, different mobile carriers. You have family postpaid plans, right? You can have multiple people in the family. Multiple people can have different kind of usage. Let's say you are using less, so your amount will be less. Someone else is talking more. Let's say using internet more, their usage will be more. Just depends upon what is the usage that is going under a particular subscription. Let's say Tata Steel has a lot of businesses around the world. Tata Motors, let's say, is only in India. So the amount of usage is less. Tata Steel, let's say, the amount of usage is more. Based on the usage out here, it's completely based upon the usage. The billing will be generated accordingly per a month as such out there. ID will be the same, meaning if I am an employee called A, I will have an ID called a@tata.com. I will log in, but I'll only be able to see Tata Motors. If you are an employee, you are, let's say, logging in with the rate b@tatasteel.com or let's say tata.com. You'll be able to only see Tata Steel subscription. The login is the same, ID is the same, meaning @tata.com is the same, but the entire thing is, let's say, different. Meaning we call this as a domain. We call this as the Active Directory domain. For example, in my case, if I go into my Active Directory, I have a domain called something like this dot on microsoft.com. If you just scroll down in the Active Directory, there is something called custom domain names. So what does Tata do is that they buy domains called @tata.com, link that domain name with the primary domain audio. So if I go here, I can say this is my custom domain. I can say add primary domains. I can give a domain name here telling it is tata.com and say add a domain out here. If I add a domain, I'll have to do some verifications and all that stuff. If I have to do this, I have to verify all these things out. If I own a domain, I can verify all these things out. And what will happen here is again, this unverified domain is such out here. I can delete this out. Domain is not free of cost. Domain is something that you have to pay. Every domain is paid because Azure doesn't sell domains for you. Azure just goes ahead, takes your domain, places it out here. Domain is paid. You'll have to buy a domain from an external provider like GoDaddy or host names, exactly. GoDaddy or Bluehost. There are a lot of companies who give you domains. Just like you buy a domain for a website called facebook.com. You can have the domain here, add that domain here. I'll also show you I have a domain. Also add that and I'll show you here. And once you add a domain, your primary domain will change to @tata.com. In this place, instead of dot on microsoft.com, you'll have something called tata.com out here. So whichever user you're adding into your account will have an ID called user at the rate or user1 @tata.com, user2 @tata.com, and so on and so forth. It's the extension of the email ID that someone is using, and I'm a part of their tenant out here. It's an extension of the email ID out here, and different accounts have their different domains out there as such. For a tenant, the ID will be allocated by Microsoft. Yes, you cannot change it. No, you cannot change it. Tenant ID is something which is allocated to us by default when you create an account. This is something that is not in my control, which is, let's say, it's a string. Yes, it's an alphanumeric character. This is something that gets allocated to me when I create an account with Microsoft. You do not have any control on this one. This is for Microsoft to understand that you are a tenant with them. Okay, I'll just take a question online. There's someone who had a question online. Sorry, I had to cut you. Someone online had a question. Can you please go now?
Yeah, Kiran, like I have created
Mhm.
an account but couldn't see the
Okay.
tenant ID under Active Directory. It's saying as
So
no.
yes, you created the account. So yes, this is one of the common issues that I have, let's say, seen of late. So the question here is that I created, let's say, a tenant, but if I go here into Azure Active Directory, you probably will get an error telling that you do not have an access or something like that. Correct?
Yes.
So in order to get rid of that, please go to subscriptions, create a subscription, and once you create a subscription, you'll be able to see your tenant. In my case, since I have a subscription, it's showing me the tenant out here. In some cases, what Azure is doing right now is that it's not giving you a tenant ID until and unless you have a subscription out here. So once you create a subscription, then you'll be able to go ahead and, let's say, see your tenant and do a lot of things out here in your tenant out here as such.
Okay.
Yes, any more questions here? Not really. If I go to the subscriptions, the ID that gets reflected beside my subscription is a subscription ID. Because as I said, you can have multiple subscriptions under the same tenant. So I can have something known as a subscription ID. So tenant ID is different. And if you look at the subscription ID, different one. So tenant ID will come under the tenant. So if you want to go under the tenant, go into something called as Azure Active Directory. And this is where you'll be able to see a tenant ID out here. If you come under subscriptions, you'll be able to see something known as a subscription ID out here as such. Both are different. Yes, both will be different. Each and every subscription that you create will have its own unique ID. This will have, let's say, meaning this is a different subscription ID. If I go ahead add one more subscription, then that will have a different ID as such out here as such. Yes, any more questions here? Anyone, any more questions here? Again, I am going a little slow in the starting days, so that everyone will be accustomed to the Azure portal to understand what is the terminology. And please follow the technical terminology, guys, because when you go tomorrow, you cannot say I am using an Azure account. You should say I'm using an Azure tenant. So the technical terminology is something that we need to, let's say, get inculcated to. Again, just to recap around things, I started off with something called as an Azure tenant. So initially, when we were doing a demo session, we said what is Azure, what are the advantages of Azure, what is the cost saving model of a cloud, and all these things. And then we started today, or then we started yesterday with something called as Azure tenant. And again, in order to create a tenant, all you need to do is go to something called portal.azure.com. Once we get into this particular website, we need to register for something called as Azure account. Again, how do we register? Just go to portal.azure.com, either an Gmail ID or an Outlook, anything, it's fine. You just need to go into that particular portal, give your Gmail or Outlook. So if I just want to show you all, it's just this particular, okay, I'll just close this. It's portal.azure.com. Just going here, giving your Gmail or something like that. So let's say I will say this is 7 a.m. DevOps class at the rate gmail.com. As in when I do this, right, it says we couldn't find any account with that particular username. I'll say, okay, fine, get a new Microsoft account. And this is going to go ahead and create something called as a Microsoft account for me. And it's asking us to create a password, the first step. So I'll go ahead and put a password in here. So creating a password, and after creating a password, it says, okay, fine, I'll send you a verification email. Please give me the code. And once I put in the code, the next thing is that you'll get a puzzle to solve that out. Again, that's getting a little trickier these days. Microsoft is improving their security. So the puzzle just tells you that, okay, fine, find an image and all that stuff. So once you solve that puzzle, you'll be diverted inside this particular portal. You'll be able to see something like this, not exactly like this, but you'll be able to get a welcome message telling that welcome to Azure, get started and all that stuff. And this is called as an Azure tenant. So again, if you want to check your tenant ID, you'll have to go into something called Azure Active Directory to get a tenant. After that, we are talking about Azure subscription. Again, I'm telling that if you have an Azure tenant, you cannot start using the cloud. It's just like you have a space, but if you want to start using the cloud, you need something known as a subscription to be in place. And to get a subscription, all I need to do is go here into my portal.azure.com. I'm able to see something called as subscriptions. If you're not able to see this, click on the search for something called as subscriptions out here. And once you click on this, in my case, I'm able to see a subscription with some name. You won't be able to see anything. You'll say there is no subscriptions and everything. You just need to say add. And once you say add, you need to register or sign up for something called as a free trial subscription. Again, once you hit the sign up button, you'll be able to see another page wherein you need to give your name, your phone number, verify your phone number, give a credit card information. This is very important. You'll have to give your credit card information and validate whether the credit card is, let's say, authentic or not. So for that, Azure will deduct 2 rupees from your credit card. Again, they'll refund this, of course. And once you do that, once you sign up, you will get something called as a free trial subscription, which is free for the first 30 days. You will get somewhere around 14,000 in the form of credits, and you will be able to use this for this particular demo sessions. Like this particular subscription is good enough. After that, we said that there is also something called as a pay as you go, which is like a postpaid connection pretty much, which is not free trial, which doesn't have an expiry. It is charged on a monthly basis depending upon the usage plus the support plan that you go for. What is the support plan that you go for, and so on and so forth. And after that, we are now talking about multi subscriber model, wherein I am telling why do you need multiple subscriptions under the same tenant ID? Why do you need so many subscriptions? And then we are saying it is for separation between different companies like Tata Motors with Tata Steel, and Tata Steel with, let's say, Tata Finance, so that employee of one particular company called Tata Motors will only be able to sign into Tata Motors, employee of Tata Steel will only be able to sign into Tata Steel, Tata Finance will only be able to sign into Tata Finance. And also from a tenant perspective, I will be able to, let's say, go ahead and understand how is the cost. Should I limit a cost? Should I set some budget? Should I set some alerts, and so on and so forth? So this is what we've been, let's say, discussing over the, let's say, yesterday and today out here. This is what we've been doing. So yes, any questions still here that I can take? Anyone, anything that you're not following, any questions or something that I can address? Anyone, anything as such? Again, just a reminder, guys, please go to docs.microsoft.com. Microsoft.com. Please visit this particular website. And once you go in here, you'll have a lot of documentations, and all these documentations are for various products of Microsoft. But one thing that we need to look at is something called as Azure. Just go here, and if you scroll down, you have a lot of services. Also, later sessions will be using the same documentation to go into Azure DevOps, a product called Azure DevOps, to understand what Azure DevOps is and all these things out. And for today, just go to Google and say, what is Azure subscription? Understand what really means by an Azure subscription out here. And then, very first link, any link, I'm okay with it. It'll just tell you Azure subscription is a base container, comes with groups and all that stuff. You just scroll down. It'll have multiple things out here on what is Azure subscription, what is accesses and all that stuff out here. And in tomorrow's session, we'll start with user management. We'll go into the Active Directory. We'll see user management on how do you add multiple users into your Azure subscription, what kind of a role that you can give to someone, and so on and so forth. Okay. Yes. Any questions before I close? Anyone? Any questions before I close? So since it's the first week out here, the classes will be around 45 to 50 minutes, and slowly we'll be increasing the time, and we'll also be doing a lot of assignments as and when the classes progress out here. Okay. Thank you guys, and have a good day ahead.